Novak's drifting in the corner. Lynn over Dirk. Oh, come on! Timeout Dallas. How good is this?
Kick the ball back out, and Novak hit. Now watch Jeremy Lin right here, right over the top of Dirk Nowitzki. Back-to-back threes under pressure.
Yes, we are. To Linfinity and beyond. That's our first Jeremy Lin pun of the day, in fact, and we are flying high as we begin our first segment. When Tina Servacio joined us last month, the Knicks were struggling and Jeremy Lin was a second-year player buried at the end of the bench. Now he's an international phenomena and the Knicks are flying high. Welcome to Simon Says on the Mark. I'm Russell Simon.
And I'm Mark Donatelli.
We're going to talk tons about Jeremy Lin. I've caught Linsanity and Linfluenza. It's a deadly combination. I might die soon. In fact, Buzz Lightyear is here, and we've got some questions from some pro athletes who left, soon-to-be pro athletes, I should say, who left them on our Facebook page. Mark, you got some, right?
Exactly. As high school juniors, we're always being asked for advice. We on our Facebook page, we've had some pro athletes, some collegiate athletes, asking us for some advice affecting them in the sports world.
And I've got the first question here now. Hey guys, I love the show. I'm a big-time college player, and everyone keeps telling me that I'm going to be the #1 pick. There's this guy, though, Robert, and he's acting all competitive and stuff, scheduling his pro day one day ahead of mine, and it's really annoying. Should I be nervous about him? Thanks, and that question is from Andrew from Palo Alto, California. I think I know someone who's named Andrew who plays football from Palo Alto.
And maybe plays football for Stanford. Who knows? And I can only wonder who that Robert guy must be.
Yeah. What would you say to Andrew?
I would say, Andrew, listen, there's nothing to worry about. You're the #1 pick. You have all the credentials. You have the arm strength. You have the pocket presence. You know, you have the accuracy. You even designed a building on Stanford campus. Everyone knows how smart you are.
He's an intellectual.
Right, and they know the leadership skills that you have. There's really nothing to worry about. You can even sit out the combine, which I'm sure he is. He doesn't have to do anything for the combine. Just worry about your own pro day. I think you'll be fine come April.
Well, speaking of the combine, RG3 said he would run and he's going to run the 40, but he is not going to throw. That's an interesting tidbit. And you wonder last year, obviously, with Cam Newton, he's not really the typical quarterback mold, very physical, very aggressive, but he was really, by all accounts, a smashing success for Carolina. And do you think that factors in at all in the Colts' decision? I mean, obviously Peyton is done. They're going to go in a new direction. But do you think that can give RG3 a little leg up in here? I mean, we want to reassure Andrew, obviously. He sounds distressed.
Well, you mentioned that he's not going to throw in the combine, and that's what most top 10 quarterbacks that know they're going to go, and it's a sure thing. They know that they're go in that top 10. They don't have to throw at the combine. It doesn't really matter. With RG3, I've heard a lot. They're saying, what's Andrew Luck's ceiling? They know what he can do. They know what kind of quarterback he is. But when you look at a
very good quarterback,
right? But if you look at the athleticism of RG3, it can be tempting for certain teams up in the top 5. You could definitely see a lot of trades happening. I would be surprised if he went past the top 5. So for both these guys, I really don't think there's much to worry about, especially for Andrew.
Of course, and you look at the top 3 right now. You've got obviously the Colts, and then the Rams, who obviously have Sam Bradford, and they're not going to pick RG3. But then you've got the Vikings, and even the Redskins have been rumored to be interested in RG3. So there could be a lot of movement and a lot of trades with teams really desperate to get RG3. And you look at the success that Cam Newton had last year, and he really represents a game changer at the quarterback position. And that's very appealing to a team like the Vikings with Adrian Peterson, even though he tore his ACL, but he's going to be back this year. And then, of course, Washington, they love to spend the money. And I got to think he's an enticing prospect for, picks 2 through 5 a little down the line, other than Indy.
Well, I think it'll be interesting, especially for the Rams' point of view, having that second pick. How do they see what do they see in Maurice Claiborne, the cornerback from LSU?
True.
What do they see
Matt
in Justin
Khalil.
Blackman, right?
Guys,
Matt Khalil,
Thank
exactly. What do they see in
He's a
these
beast.
guys? Do they feel as though that they're good enough to stay in that the number 2 overall pick,
True.
or could they move down, stockpile some more draft picks, and get more value out of other guys?
We've got another question from one of our older viewers. It's a baseball question, actually, a little change. Now it is spring training. The Yankees have reported the Mets are gearing up for another pretty pathetic season at Citi Field. And here we go. I'm a 42-year-old pitcher, and honestly, I'm getting tired. My best friend retired, and I know I can't pitch forever. What do you think the team can do to prepare for life without me? I can't play forever. I know it, and they know it too. That's from Mariano from the Yankees spring training down in Florida. What would you tell Mariano?
Well, Mo, if that's okay, if you're okay with me
Nickname
calling
already?
you that.
We're already on a nickname basis?
I think I know who I'm talking about here. Mo, you're gonna retire as the best closer of all time. There's really nothing to worry about. You're an instant Yankee classic.
Legend, best closer ever.
Exactly. I know it must be tough with Jorge leaving, and you could see the old guard per se. Derek Jeter.
Definitely.
Right. Andy Pettitte. These guys, starting to fade away. Just him and Jeter left.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing to worry about. You give it all this year. I think the Yankees, with the way the rotation is, with Pineda, obviously CeCe leading it. They acquired Ibanez to replace your best friend Jorge in the DH spot. You try your best this year. Try to make a run at the championship, and see where you are after that. See how you're feeling after another 162 games.
And I think this really goes to show more than anything that not even the decline of Mariano, because he's still great and he's the best closer ever, but the fact that he's getting older shows how kind of the old guard of the 1999-2000 Yankees, the last Yankees left from that team really, are going to be no longer in about 2-3 years. Jeter is definitely winding down. He had a subpar year last year, even though he had one of the most electrifying days in New York sports history, obviously, when he got the 3,000th hit. So it just goes to show, time flies, and Jeter and all these guys, you think they can play forever, but they do have an expiration date.
Well, it's definitely going to be an interesting few years in terms of the Yankees transitioning from that old, from the old guard, exactly, from the 90s, and it's going to depend on what kind of roles Brett Gardner and these younger players, Robinson Cano. We already know their caliber.
Beast.
Exactly. I honestly don't believe they're going to go through a really rough transition like we've seen with other teams when they're changing those core players. And obviously the big question is Derek Jeter. What do they do with him the next few years? He's going to be around. You've heard people say, move him to first base, move him to left field. It'll be interesting to see. He's definitely going to be around for at least 2 or 3 more years.
So we're assuring Mariano's friends now.
I'm assuring him that Jeter will be around.
I mean, he's got to be around. The guy's the captain. He's been there forever. Now we've got another question, and this one is actually from one of our viewers in Mexico City. Actually, no, excuse me, Barcelona.
Okay.
He was watching on Telemundo, and he wrote on our Facebook page, and I think I take Spanish. I have a big test tomorrow, in fact, so I think I'm going to take this one.
You'll take the Spanish portion
yes,
of it.
I'm going to answer it as well, though. Hola, chicos. Soy un ala pivot de los Lakers, pero y no, creo que la GM que realmente me gusta. Sigo pensando que voy a ser objeto de comercia, pero esta vida estoy aquí. ¿Cuál es la mejor manera que lidiar con este problema? Gracias, Pau from Los Angeles, and sorry I didn't really make eye contact with the camera on that one. I kind of had to look down at the Spanish.
Right, no problem.
I'm still hoping to pull out a B, though.
Right. I think you'll do fine tomorrow.
What's the translation?
For those who need a translation, it's, hey guys, I'm a power forward from the Lakers, but I don't think my GM really likes me. I keep thinking that I'm going to be traded, but I'm still here. What is the best way to deal with this problem? Thanks, Pau from Los Angeles.
Well, Pal, obviously it's probably been very hard on you, being subjected to trade rumors constantly is very frustrating, First you were going to go to the Clippers and be traded for Chris Paul, and that had gone through, so the Lakers basically said, we don't want you as much as we want someone else, but then David Stern intervened, he played God, and he sent him to the Clippers, and you're still there. But now you're being mentioned in Dwight Howard trades, and you're, definitely getting frustrated, and I can't even imagine the turmoil, that you're going through. And obviously Kobe Bryant yesterday, 2 days ago in the locker room, vented to the media saying, I wish they would just do something with Pau. You have allies on that team, and after the dominating Lakers win against Portland, the Lakers held a players-only meeting where they discussed Pau and how they can focus on winning with the team they have, and I'm sure that must have been good for you, but obviously a permanent solution needs to be reached. And at this point, I think Dwight Howard's going to be a free agent this summer. They don't know if he's going to return to the Magic or not. So at some point in the near future, your future will, finally have a final chapter. This open book of Pau Gasol trade rumors will end, and you can finally rest assured that you will be either a Laker or you will have an integral part in another team. And you notice in all these trade rumors, one more thing, is that, they're all for Dwight Howard and Chris Paul, and really, two of the best players in the NBA right now. So being mentioned in that company as if to say, Pau Gasol and, number one pick is enough for some of these superstars is good enough, and I think Pau can take pleasure in that, and he's definitely got some outlets on this Laker team.
It must be mentally daunting, and that goes for baseball, that goes for hockey, that goes for basketball, for guys around the trade deadline to be thinking, what does my team see in me? Do they really want me here for the remainder of my career? And it must put these athletes in a really strange position because they don't really know how hard to play.
Yes,
There's really no incentive for them to play any harder than they are.
Especially when you consider the fact that the Lakers have really treated him like garbage.
Right.
I mean, he's been subject to trade rumors and, all that kind of stuff, and it's got to have been hard for him, and I don't think they really respected him. And this is not a guy who's some mid-level player. This is a guy who can seriously play. I know he struggled last year against the Mavericks in the playoffs, but Pau Gasol's a big-time player in the NBA, and I think the Lakers have disrespected him.
Right, I don't think, obviously the front office hasn't done much to console him, but honestly, my advice to him would just be play hard, and see where you end up. Either way, you'll be in a good situation.
And the Lakers are 19-13, second in that division to the Clippers, and they're definitely feeling stressed. Obviously, you don't want to lose to your crosstown rival, especially when they're the Clippers, and they've been so inferior for so long. But I think at the end of the day, if you're LA, you've got to focus on winning now with the team you have, while also, if you can, being better prepared for the future. And speaking of stressed out forwards, we've got another one who sent in a question.
Here we go. I am an NBA forward, and I've had a rough year. My wife divorced me, and now everybody's booing me every time I touch the ball. It's really annoying. What should I do? And that is from Chris from Newark.
Well, Chris, typically I would have sympathy for you. Divorce, it's a very rough thing. I've had my fair share of breakups. Mark, I know you have had some serious issues with that, so maybe you can offer him advice. But anyway, Chris, normally I would console you, but in this case, I'm not going to do it, man. 72 days. You're in a reality TV show with Kim Kardashian. Do you watch that show?
I literally have never watched a second of that show.
Okay, can I make a confession here?
Go ahead.
Okay, I did watch like one.
All right, we're voicing opinions here. We're consoling.
That's not a point. Yeah, I mean, really, I should go in therapy with Pau Gasol.
Yeah.
Maybe we could sit on the couch together. But it's just not a good look for you to be on that reality TV show and saying the stupid things you're saying and being exposed to an audience that's just ridiculing you constantly. It can't feel good for Chris, but I think he deserves it. He knows what he signed up for. He married Kim Kardashian, for heaven's sake. And it's pretty funny to watch. And I was at the Knicks game a couple of weeks ago, and I booed him with gusto, just like everyone else. And I think the only way that this can really stop is to have someone like Jeremy Lin say, I don't understand why the crowd is booing him. And that's exactly what he did. And if Jeremy Lin tells me to stop booing Chris Humphries, I will stop booing Chris Humphries. But other than that, no, I will boo with gusto because he deserves it. 72 days of marriage, give me a break.
It may be kind of bad advice for me to say the exact same thing. We're not really, giving him any kind of comfort whatsoever.
He doesn't deserve comfort.
Yeah, exactly. And
do you know what a waste of time that show is? I'm trying to do homework, and then you have Chris Humphries talking on the TV in some stupid show. It's so annoying.
You've seen other pro athletes have their own reality TV shows. Terrell Owens,
the T.O. show
Chad
when he was in Buffalo.
Well, who's again going to become Chad Johnson, but we'll get onto that later.
Keep it going.
They really expose themselves, and you see some, the T.O. show, he's like talking with his two girl-type friends and like, talking about like feelings and stuff. And I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with an athlete being open and whatnot.
Being open on TV, with that
but to have your own TV show, and well, I guess it's not really his own TV show, but to appear on a reality show,
watched by millions,
takes a pretty egotistical guy, and fans don't like to see that, and it's tough to say, hey,
I mean, who's he appealing to being on this show? Like, I just don't understand at this point. I mean, if he really divorces Kim Kardashian or what, she divorced him. What? See, maybe you.
Well, you can't avoid this stuff.
You are knowledgeable about recent pop culture events.
It's kind of impossible to avoid that. It was all over the news.
You can't avoid the oncoming train that is the Chris Humphries Kim Kardashian wedding divorce saga.
Unfortunately.
Poor Chris. Anyway, we're talking about a guy who's really uplifting and is actually a hero to many. We're going to be talking about Jeremy Lin, and we're going to be talking about some hockey when we come back. You're watching Simon Says on the Mark. Take this break to go like us on Facebook I'm Russell Simon.
I'm Mark Donatello.
Why are we saying goodbye? Why are we saying our names? And we will be right back, guys.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Welcome back to Simon Says on the Mark. Mark, I think there's one big story in sports that we haven't talked about yet.
What is that?
What do you think it could be?
I'm not really sure. Peyton Manning?
Could it be the guy on my jersey, Jeremy Lin?
Wow.
Of
That was
course,
quick.
the meteoric rise of Lin may have reached the stratosphere when Lin made the cover of Sports Illustrated for the second week in a row. 2 weeks in a row. That is one more time than Bill Belichick in 2 weeks. I can't remember anyone ever being on the cover of Sports Illustrated 2 weeks in a row who isn't, Kobe when they win the finals, that kind of thing.
I believe you're forgetting Kate Upton in the swimsuit edition.
2 weeks in a row?
She might have been
I thought
in
they
between
came at the same time.
Okay, maybe the two regular Sports Illustrated covers, but she was definitely in between the two.
Okay,
Just
Kate
saying.
Upton, Jeremy Lin, two superstars, and Jeremy Lin, his rise, of course, very impressive. I'm a hardcore Knicks fan. You're not, but even you can appreciate what he's been doing.
Oh, exactly, and I think it's just great for the game when you have a guy that has such integrity and it's such smarts. When you know an athlete is one of the smartest people in the country, it makes you feel good.
Wait, so he's one of the smartest people in the country just
He
because
went to Harvard.
Just because he went to Harvard.
I think as a fan, you like to see a very well-rounded athlete. You don't want to look up to a guy that you have at least 400 points in your IQ higher than.
Yeah.
You like to see these really well-rounded athletes, and you've seen the way he's handled this stardom very well. And you look at a guy like Tim Tebow. He's handled his pressure pretty well.
The comparison is obvious.
It's strikingly
And
similar.
a lot of people have been actually talking about that, as we can go that route fine. I mean, Jeremy Lin, obviously another deeply religious guy, and I think he does it in a much better way than Tebow, a little less obvious, praise with his teammates, and he's all about that. But really, Jeremy Lin, just his story and what he's been through is just, so incredible, and it just adds another layer to, the depths of his awesomeness, we can just say that, and it's just huge, he's everywhere, and it all started, of course, in a 99-92 win over the Nets. He had 25 points, then Utah 28, then against LA, against Kobe, after Kobe had said in Boston that he hadn't really heard of Jeremy Lin, he had to go look at the tape. He dropped 38 on him. The Knicks had won 7 in a row, and then on Sunday, against Dirk Nowitzki and the defending champion Dallas Mavericks, Lin was on fire again, and the Knicks are on fire too. I mean, they're just above 500. They were at 8-15 before Lin really started going, and I think that's the most impressive thing about it, is that of all the pieces on this team, you think Carmelo Anthony, you think Amari Stoudemire, it took Jeremy Lin to get it done, but now the Knicks finally are winning. Living, right. I should say.
And not to try to sound
number 2.
Right, not to try to sound pessimistic here. I'd like to see, if Jeremy Lin was on the Memphis Grizzlies instead of the New York Knicks, it might be a little different, being that New York is such a big stage. And that's nothing against Jeremy Lin. It's just
the media's covering.
Right, the media, the way the media has handled it. But you're right, and I think it's great that I believe he is the first American-born Asian American,
fourth, I believe.
But yeah, and I think whenever you hear stories like that, it's great because it breaks the kind of stereotypes that this certain kind of demographic can't play basketball, or and you never want to hear that kind of stuff.
Jump.
You always like those kind of contradictions, and he's just great for the game.
And one of the other things that's really impressive about him from a basketball standpoint is, I've taken a couple things away. Jeremy Lin makes everyone on this team better. We've seen the emergence of Steve Novak, another guy from the D-League. The guy was a Reno Bighorn with Jeremy Lin before coming to the Knicks, after being with a bunch of teams bouncing around. But he has emerged as a real offensive tour de force, especially from deep. He had a bunch of great threes against Dallas, and his emergence and the emergence of Landry Fields again is a huge scoring threat. And Tyson Chandler is an alley-oop machine off the pick and roll. Just goes to show you how one point guard can just make a huge difference.
Well, and you love that underdog story. And again, I'm going to mention the Harvard thing. I particularly like him because he's a Harvard athlete.
What other Harvard athletes do we know? Let's hear. Who's the other Harvard athlete?
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Of course he is.
And he's a great underdog story himself. You know, I think for some reason in sports we tend to avoid these guys. You know, from certain schools. You know, people are talking about, oh, you know, Andrew Luck, is he too smart? People.
Well, that's idiotic. I can't stand that.
Or when people try to criticize Ryan Fitzpatrick as you know being a starting NFL quarterback.
Maybe if he could beat the Jets, then he'd be.
Well, people will use his intelligence as
against
a negative,
him. Yeah,
and that doesn't really make any sense. And so, you know, whenever, like I said, whenever you see these guys from Harvard or Ivy League schools, or when there's a really well-rounded athlete, that's what the fans.
We
love.
can say that. I definitely love him, and you know, New York fans love him, and there really is. You know, no one knows where this is going to go. You know, if he keeps having these crazy games, and the Knicks somehow make a run in the playoffs, and I think they have the pieces. You know, Melo's coming back. They obviously lost to New Jersey, but this team has enough on paper, it seems, to really go kind of deep and make a run, and I think they are better than last year. Even though Amari's been struggling, he's got the hurt knee, and he's really been slower, especially on the defensive end. With Jeremy Lin, anything is possible, even though he wears Nike.
That's all it
that's
takes.
An Adidas, you know, that's an Adidas slogan, but I could still use that.
That's all it takes. It's just a little mixing up of the chemistry, and you're pretty much set for the rest of the season.
There you go. And on from basketball, there's another sport being played at Madison Square Garden, and it too is being played by a very, very good team, and that, of course, is the New York Rangers. Unfortunately, how is Sabres doing? I just want to, you know, how the Buffalo teams.
They've had a rocky stretch, but they're starting to bounce back. They're 6 points out of 8th as we speak.
Me and you together forever in some kind of
Hope
sports
springs
purgatory.
eternal.
Sports purgatory. I got the Jets. I mean, Lynn is rescuing me single-handedly, but you know, we'll get ours one day.
Hope springs eternal. They beat the Islanders the other night. They beat the Penguins a few days ago.
Yeah.
They're on a run. They could
There we
potentially
go.
make
Look
the
at this.
playoffs.
Optimism
Hope springs eternal.
abounds here on Simon Says on the Mark. Anyway, the Red Wings stretched their home winning streak to an amazing 23 games with a win over the San Jose Sharks on Sunday, only adding to their newly made record. What makes this team so dominant at Joe Louis Arena?
Well, you know,
Hockey town,
right?
baby.
You hear a lot of people criticize
Love
them for
that.
being hockey town. You know, people say, oh, you know, Chicago should be hockey town, or you know, Boston should be hockey town. I personally say Buffalo should be hockey town.
Of course you
But you put that aside. Winning 23 games at home is just absolutely ridiculous. It's a record. They broke it a few games ago.
I mean, that's just incredible.
Right, and
unheard of.
Any NHL game, for the most part, unless you're playing some of the conference bottom feeders, is a tough game.
Or
You
any
know,
team in Florida or California.
You're, you know, as a true NHL fan, you're gonna know that every team has its off night. You know, you could be the most talented team in the league, and you're still, you're still gonna have games where you just fall asleep, your goaltending's off, your scoring's off, whatever. To win 23 games, and obviously their road record is not as good, but to win 23 games in a row on home ice is truly magnificent. I can't even fathom how they're doing it right now.
And what stands out to me is, it's not like football where crowd noise can really actually play a big role in it. And I look at Seattle, they were playing the Giants a couple years back, and that crowd noise was so intense that they had a ton of false starts. The Giants did, and they eventually ended up losing that game. And in hockey, it's not like that. I mean, do you think it is?
Well, I'd beg to differ. I mean, hockey arenas can get pretty loud. Just as any. You look at the
It can
Utah
get loud,
Jazz.
but you can.
Right.
It's not like for communication. It's not like your quarterback audibling to
Well,
your wide receivers on the side.
every sport needs to have that fluid communication. But when you're looking at how the Red Wings are doing this. Mike Babcock is obviously one of the best coaches in the league. He won the Stanley Cup with them a few years ago. They lost to the Stanley Cup to Pittsburgh Penguins.
One of the new
but still,
dominating coaches.
I believe he was the head coach of the Canadian team when they won the gold a few years ago. He is the leader of that team. He has the chemistry down. You look at the leadership from Lidstrom and Datsuk. He's known as the top dangler in the league. The way that he stick handles is truly just amazing. But I think the most underrated thing is the grinders and just the role players that they have.
Definitely.
Todd Bertuzzi, Drew Miller, brother of Ryan Miller. These guys are great penalty killers. They chase after pucks in the corner. They do the dirty things that set up, Pavel Datsuk and guys like that.
And they've definitely got a winning formula at home. When you bring tough physical hockey, like you get from Bertuzzi and Miller, and you bring that to a home atmosphere, it really makes the visiting team, shaking their boots a little bit. And it's very tough to win when you combine those two things, especially the physicality that we've seen so far.
Oh,
from
yeah,
Detroit.
certainly. And Detroit's never been an easy place to play, but it's still ridiculous to think that 23 games in a row that you could even pull that off.
It's incredible. And another team from the New York area that's doing well, they play at the Garden. In fact, they're the New York Rangers, and they're led by goalie Henrik Lundqvist. And he is leading the league in both save percentage and shutouts for the New York Rangers. Surprisingly, they also happen to be leading the Eastern Conference. Is he the reason for the success in New York? I hope I said that right.
You messed up a little.
No,
I know. I've heard people
no,
call him
no,
Henrik,
no.
so it's okay.
I can just say Henrik.
It's wrong. It's Henrik. But
I've been watching
can
the
put that
Rangers,
aside.
actually. I've been getting into them. I
Yeah,
really like
no,
Tortorella especially.
they're a very exciting team. I'd like to be able to credit Lundqvist for being the main guy. He's leading the league in two of the most major the categories. He leads the league in save percentage with a .94. He has the most shutouts with 7. Again, as a guy that enjoys watching good goaltenders, I'd like to give him the credit, but it's just a very well-rounded team. In the summer when they picked up Brad Richards, I think a lot of people realized how good this team could be. When you look at the top with John Tortorella, I think he's at least in the top 3 best coaches in the league. Like I said,
him.
Babcock.
His post-game interviews alone are just incredible.
Right, and he's a very fiery guy. If you watch the HBO series, you know
Yes,
that.
of course,
He amazingly, he's so vocal, and he gets his guys going every single night. But I think the underrated thing is Ryan Callahan, virtually a Buffalo boy from Rochester.
There you go.
The Rangers finally found a leader that they can follow. Ryan Callahan, he does all the right things. He hustles after pucks. He can score. He can do pretty much anything a captain needs to do, and I think he's leading this team, and I think they can make a serious run.
And this was a Rangers team that struggled last year in the playoffs against Washington.
Right.
And do you think this team has made the adjustments that they can make a real run?
Oh, certainly. When you look at that top line with Richards and Gaborik, they knew exactly what they needed last summer going in. Marian Gaborik kind of had an off year, you could say last year. But they knew they needed a guy that would be able to dish him, that would be able to get him the puck consistently, and that is exactly what Brad Richards is doing. And he's scoring himself. You also look at guys like Stepan, and then also the really talented defensive core that they have with Boyle, Michael Del Zotto.
Right.
And Mark Stahl. These guys are young, these guys are talented, and they are helping Lundqvist out a lot.
And it is a weaker Eastern Conference, especially because after we talked about it, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, and their resiliency without Sidney Crosby, one of the main superstars in the NHL right now, but they continue to win somehow without the best player in the league, and they're currently 6th in the East. How are they doing this?
Right, and you look at Crosby, and he is another topic in itself. With concussions, and that is an ongoing problem, and the league is trying to deal with that. But I think that's what speaks the most about this Pittsburgh Penguins franchise. From the top down, not only do they care about winning, but they know how to win.
Yes.
Their coach Dan Bylsma, I mentioned Tortorella before, I mentioned Mike Babcock before, but I honestly think that Bylsma is at the top of the game. He's known for being a guy that players like to play for. That guys really understand. His philosophy. So like I said, it starts from the top down, and then also Evgeny Malkin is just tearing it up.
Of course.
MVP numbers. And he's really carrying the load that they're missing with Crosby.
It's going to be a very competitive Eastern Conference in both hockey and basketball, and that's all the time we have for now. I'm Russell Simon.
I'm Mark Donatelli.
Go Lynn. The Knicks are still going to make a run, man. I'm telling you, I got Buzz Lightyear over here. Says goodbye.
Take me to your leader.
Take me to your leader. The leader is Jeremy Lin.
I think the leader is David Stern.
The leader is Jeremy Lin.